Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show, where common sense still has a mic and we speak truth without apology. I'm your host, Nate Cain, and today we're joined by a man who's not afraid to say what most are thinking. Navy vet, proud father, and all-around truth slinger, Jericho Green is in the house. Jericho, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nate.
So, man, there's so much.
I'm still taking in your background.
Go ahead.
All those lovely toys on the wall.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You love that? Let me put that back up real quick here.
Very nice.
Yeah, this is my new background here. I love it. So, very America.
Yeah, tell me you're not from California, but without telling me you're not from California.
Oh, yeah, I grew up there.
Oh, so you understand.
I grew up in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So, yep, Pomona and Glendora, that area. And in fact, my brother still lives out there.
A lot has changed, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I joined the military back in 1996, and yep. And then I moved away, got sent all over the place, and got out of the military, was on the East Coast, and then about 5 years of being out here, I decided to move back. And when I moved back, I went through culture shock. I'd been gone for 10 years, and California had just completely changed. One of the things that, it was just crazy, but what really shifted, I mean, they've always had illegals, that have come to California, but it was like they were blatantly, openly promoting it. Was the first time I'd ever seen that, including the Mexican government sending us, we were getting material in the mail, offering us free textbooks in Spanish for our kids. I was like, are you serious? From the Mexican government. And they were advertising radio programs in English for illegal aliens living in the United States. It was nuts. But I'm glad to be living here in a bunker in West Virginia, especially in light of all the crap going on right now. I am far away from
you made it
all
out.
Major cities.
You made it out. Nate.
I did.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. You go ahead.
Being from California, you know how big it is. So people on the East Coast or maybe in the Midwest, those states are, especially the farther you get east, those states are so much smaller. So being where I'm up by Sacramento, so I still feel like a world away from what's going on in what you might call the armpit of California.
Yep. Now, we're up in Sacramento. Are you nearby?
I'm about 20 minutes away from Sacramento, so I can still smell the stench, but I'm not too close to it.
What city? I probably know it. I got cousins that live up there, and is it Rancho Cordova?
I live in a place called Plumas Lake, which is probably 15 minutes from Yuba City.
Okay, yeah, you are out there a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little rural out here.
Yep. People don't think about that. When they think of California, they don't think of rural, but it has a lot of rural areas, especially like in the center part of the state and on the eastern side of the state. There's a lot of rural land out there. And actually, I love the geography of California. I love generally the kickback, laid back culture.
Mhm.
I hate the politics, always have. And but but it's sad because California really is one of the most beautiful states, and it has so much to offer, and there's so much there, and there are a lot of really great people there, including a lot of great conservatives.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, the elections are rigged, and you've got probably a million illegal aliens that are voting in our elections, and of course they're going to vote for whoever's going to give them handouts, and that seems to be what goes on. So, but there's breaking news right now. It was just on before I got on the show, and I want to bring this up here because I thought this was pretty interesting. There's been so much different opinions on what's going on in Iran and Israel. You got some people just absolutely adamant, we do not need to be involved in this. You got other people that are saying, hey, we need to take out their nuclear facilities. You've got other people saying, hey, we need to, go in. I'm kind of like middle of the road. My feelings are, look, I'm glad that we had an opportunity to take out their nuclear weapons production. I just, knowing what I know and having been in the DoD for a very long time of my career, starting all the way back in '96 to until recently. I spent most of my career working in the Defense Department. I've worked for NSA. I've worked for Marine, the Marforce Cyber. I've worked for the Navy for the majority of my career. So I'm very, very aware of what the threats are. And I think a lot of people are not really, it's easy to be an armchair, opinionist, right? To basically an armchair commander or whatever, say what we think without having all of the intelligence in front of us. But at the same time, and I've heard this made, this comment made by some people and some that I've even had on the show, Gulf War and the intelligence that led us into, the Gulf War with Iraq, a lot of people felt betrayed afterwards and felt like, we were tricked into it. In the end, I have to basically look at is this a war that we wanted? Is this something that we wanted to get into? I think probably not. I don't think Trump really was hoping for this, but I think what's done is done. And the moment that we had to strike and take out, these nuclear facilities, I think it was a good decision in my personal opinion. What's your thoughts on that?
I would definitely give the opinion of someone of the layman, because I don't have that insider information. I didn't, work for the Department of Defense and everything. So you definitely have more knowledge on this situation than the average bear for sure. But I would say that as far as you mentioned, the second Gulf War, I guess we can call it the 9/11 war.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help but have a little bit of that taste in your mouth because
oh yeah,
you got us, you got me,
yep.
You got me, Bush,
yep.
You got me.
Yep.
I'm not going to forget that though. So of course I would be surprised if people didn't have that in the back of their mind.
Yeah.
But not to sound like a MAGA or a Trumper or whatever. I don't have any evidence that would lead me to believe that Trump would lie about we need to do this, we need to strike here or whatever. Not, of course, he's human, he's capable of it. But
yeah,
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and I would agree with you because Trump has been, as long as he has been president, and even before, he has been opposed to us getting involved in wars all around the world, especially in the Middle East. I would imagine he worked very hard to put together the Abraham Accords and make sure that went through. What I'm hearing from people that I've got connections with is that while the Saudi Arabians have said publicly we condemn Israel, privately they're saying thank you very much for doing this, because they're just as much threatened by a nuclear Iran in the region as as we are, as Israel is. And I can't help but, think that this is a little bit different in the sense that we have had over and over and over again Iran funding all of these terrorist groups around the Middle East. And recently, the Houthis have been attacking U.S. ships in the Red Sea. You had, of course, in Lebanon, in Beirut, it was Iran, backed terrorists that blew up the building with all of our Marines in it. People forget about that. A lot of people don't realize that we've kind of already been at war, whether we want to admit to it or not. It's just been a proxy war. They've been using their proxies to basically fire missiles at us, to take ships in the Red Sea and things like that. Now we actually, had an opportunity because of the fact that Israel went in and basically took out all of the aircraft missile systems. So we had domination. We had the opportunity. And unfortunately, we are the only ones with the bunker buster bomb that could actually take out, I think it's called Faraz or whatever. But I've got a video. I want to bring it up because I haven't seen this yet, and I expect there'll be more to come up. But I thought this was an interesting video because it shows the this is from somebody's porch, probably way far away from from this nuclear strike, or not nuclear, but nuclear facility that was struck. But somebody did get this video here. And click this.
Damn.
Yeah. And then right then they got hit with the blast wave, so it basically kind of, you could hear glass shattering. So I mean that bomb is just a massive bomb, and it's able to go down, I think, like 60 meters or something like that, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, it'll get them wherever they are. It'll definitely reach them. I agree with you. I think Iran is to terrorists what America is to the world when there's a disaster.
Yeah.
We fund it. You need money, you need this, you need that. We're going to take care of it. So they're they're the polar opposite. We're doing good things. They're doing very bad things. But then they can always say, "Hey, it wasn't us. They detonated the bomb. They shot it. We didn't. We didn't do it." And behind the scenes, they sold it to them. But I want to ask you this. It just popped into my head. I think you'd be a great person to ask this to. So tell me if I'm oversimplifying this. I've always thought that the reason these countries, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, do they have one or not? But I think I've always thought the only reason that these dictators never detonated a bomb, and Putin's always saying this justifies using a nuke. We're going to do it. You do this. We're going to do that. I think the only reason that they don't do it, if you distill it down, is because they're not ready to go. Putin, Kim Jong-un,
that's right.
The mullah, is that what they're called, of Iran? These guys live good lives. Their people are starving by the tens of millions, but they have nice suits. They eat good food. Whatever they're into, with the downstairs area, they're into that. They go and have their parades. They shake hands with world leaders. They're living a great life. They're living the life of royalty. So I think the only thing stopping them from doing that is not wanting to leave that life, not wanting to give that up, because why else wouldn't they have? I mean, have they not been, how long has Iran been saying death to America, death to Israel? How long has Russia had, issues with their neighbors?
Yeah. Clearly, Iran has not had a nuclear bomb, and now I don't think they will for a very long time. The other issue, though, is delivery system. So even if they had a nuke, they'd have to have an ICBM in order to be able to get it to the United States. Now, they could get it to Israel. And that's why Israel, I think they saw an existential threat. I have no problem whatsoever. Look, I still remember watching the videos of what happened in Israel with Hamas going in there. They murdered, raped, beheaded, men, women, and children. And, bottom line is that kind of barbarism. I have no problem seeing that wiped out. I really don't. It's sad that there are people who are innocent that get caught up in all of that.
Mhm.
But this is the fact is the people elected Hamas, and so that was their elected government, and their elected government decided to wage an asymmetric war on Israel and go in and kidnap, rape, murder, men, women, and children that were non-combatants. And so people have forgotten that. It's like it amazes me how many times I hear, and I've got a lot of conservative friends that are very anti-Israel, but I am totally 100% opposed to where their viewpoint is coming from, because I've also looked at some of the things that have gone on. So my background has been in cybersecurity, and one of the things that I've seen is the use of propaganda in the media, and I'm very aware of it. The Iranians are very, very good at propagandizing people, and they have been very successful in our universities, in social media. And I'm all for free speech, but it's unbelievable, just how gullible some people are. The fact that you got people who, what just blows my mind is when I see homosexuals holding up, like out there, dressed in drag or whatever, and they're all free Palestine, and they didn't, it's like, I'd love to see them go protest
Idiots.
in Palestine, in Gaza, because
Idiots.
yeah, they'd be the first people that would be executed and thrown off buildings. So
Oh yeah,
it's
to the
just-
roar of the crowd.
yeah. Well, that's how like we've hit like a whole new level of insanity in our country, and I have some hope that at least that we are starting to turn things around. The pendulum is starting to swing back. I think that some of the polls that have come out, or some of the sociology studies that have been done, have shown that this next generation of kids growing up, they are far more conservative
Mhm.
than any of us. Even like they're conservative on the level of World War II's generation,
Mhm.
and it's because they've been basically put in this, they've been raised in this woke world, and they see it up in front, and they see it for what it is. And I think that it's affected them.
For sure. I think the whole lockdown era that we went through, I think that was the final straw for those kids,
Yeah.
for them to have their graduations take away and their proms, and just seeing, I think another thing that really left a bad taste in their mouth is seeing how older people our age, and anybody older than them, people in their 30s, their late 20s and up, how they were probably kind of let down because a lot of people stepped aside and allowed those things to happen, allowed the mandates and everything that came along with that. Seeing what they're allowing to be done to kids. And speaking of the pendulum swinging in the other direction and the tide turning, I read, I haven't had a chance to read the article, but I screenshotted it because I wanted to do a video about it. Is this hospital in Los Angeles is shutting down their gender affirming care for minor wing of the hospital because they lost the federal funding for it. And that's a shame that something like that has to go all the way up the ladder to the federal government. But hey, we'll take our victories where we can.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. How much of the nonsense, and I'll just call it what it is, bullshit that we have seen going on in our country over the last decade was organic? I don't think any of it was. I think it was all being funded and pushed through groups like USAID and all of these, NGOs that basically were pushing their agenda with our own dollars. So basically, we financed our own demise as a country.
Mm-hmm.
That pisses me off.
We, as the hens, we were paying for the training of the foxes that are going to inevitably come into the hen house. I agree 100%. And I think, look at Hollywood actors with their trans kids. They'll have all of your kids are trans, all of them.
Right.
That's mathematically impossible. It's not real. It's not organic. And I think there were enough people who I don't even want to say that they were duped or they were fooled in any way. They wanted this. They wanted this pedestal to be on. I stand above you, you peasants with normal heterosexual children. You guys are so passe. Look at my child.
Yeah.
My child is trans. My child is non-binary. Oh my goodness, you have a trans kid? Like that is so disgusting. And again, as I mentioned before, the this newer generation, and same with these kids with the parents who and they're trans, you let that happen. You threw your child to the wolves. That doesn't happen naturally. You, for whatever the pats on the back, the adulation from your circles that you travel in, I don't know why you did it, but you allowed it to happen to these kids, and that's evil.
Yeah. What is that disease? I'm trying to look it up right now. It's not a disease. It's a mental illness where a parent fakes a child's
Munchausen by proxy.
That is, to me, like if you were Munchausen syndrome by proxy. That is, I believe, what we are seeing with this whole trans thing. I think we have a massive amount of parents who they see it as a way of getting attention or something like that, and they and the kids probably see it as a way of getting attention too. But the parents are enabling it, and they are, and many of these Hollywood people are using it in order to, they're so used to the, to the camera and getting the spotlight, and, they can't handle it when they lose that spotlight. So that just becomes one more way of, of getting people's attention.
Yeah. And when you hear about, insert celebrity name here, so-and-so's kid came out trans, you're like, of course, your father wasn't there. He was gone and left you with your mom, or maybe some nannies, or the perverts on the set. Who knows? But you turned out that way. Yeah, I bet you did turn out that way. And what a dangerous game to play with their children, with their children's mental state, with their safety, both their physical safety. It's a very high percentage that they're going to try to hurt themselves or be successful in really hurting themselves. And for what? So people can tell you you're cool in the chat. Oh my, when you post a picture of your son wearing a dress, the comments can tell you how accepting and progressive you are, and how much you love them. Like, you don't get points as a parent for loving your kid. I hope so.
It feels like for the last decade, we've been living in a social experiment. Mm-hmm. Whether it is COVID or whether it's the trans kids, issues or whatever. It's like the globalist elites decided that they were going to create scenarios to see how far they could push the American people into just blind obedience to whatever, or blind acceptance of whatever, perversion that they want to put out there. And I really do believe a lot of these guys are pedophiles, and that's part of the reason they want to sexualize our children, so that they can, eventually, get the, they started, what do they call themselves? The minor
maps. They're minor. Yeah, they're just who are you to stand in the way of human attraction? Right. It's the laws of the universe. It's too powerful. And for you to not understand that, there's something wrong with you, not them.
Yeah, these people they really are sick. And as far as I'm concerned, we've got to. I think like I said, I think we've had a lot of good pushing back. I think one of the pivotal moments where I saw, kind of like the crack, in their facade was, oh gosh, what is his name? I'm having a brain fart here. He's a white rapper, or a rock singer, I guess, kind of a mix. Yeah, Kid Rock. Thank you, man. Why couldn't I remember that? When he set up that, that 6-pack or that 12-pack of light, and shot the hell out of it.
Yeah.
That was a moment. That to me was like that was the critical moment where all of a sudden that facade started cracking, because then people felt empowered to speak up and say something and be like, you know what, I'm done with this crap. I'm not accepting this crap. Period. And what did we see? We saw all of a sudden the corporations and all of that begin, their whole DEI programs, all that kind of stuff started falling. Of course, Trump, standing up to it as well, and him getting elected, I think that sent a big message, to corporate America as well, that we don't want to see our dollars being used promoting things that ultimately destroy our society. I'm all for freedom, and I feel like American adults should be able to basically do whatever the hell they want to do, so long as what they're doing doesn't interfere with the rights of others. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I should have to fund it or acknowledge it or even know about it. Like,
Mhm.
that's the other thing too, is like, why do I have to worry about taking my kids, out in public somewhere and having them being exposed to, some drag queen story hour with some,
Mhm.
dude's, you know, ass bouncing in their face. It's the craziest thing. How did we get to this place in this country?
Mhm. How did we get to a point where Kid Rock needed to shoot a 6-pack of beer and throw down the gauntlet saying, just because you put on a dress, you're not a man? I thought, or no, you're not a woman. I thought that was etched in stone my whole life. I thought, that's why you'll see movies where back in the day, one of the funniest things was a guy dressing like a woman. That's hilarious. It's so silly. It's silly. That's why we all laugh at it. We all think it's funny. There, that
Yeah.
sitcom with Tom Hanks and the other guy. That idea was so ridiculous. And now you have people who are taking their children to said drag queen story hours, who are taking their children to pride parades, which are just live action pornos. I've
Yeah.
seen videos of men walking within inches
Oh, I've
of a
seen it too.
child completely nude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if it's in June, it's all good. But I thought, forgive me for being an old curmudgeon, but I thought we all had to keep our clothes on in public. And the rights that you mentioned, they're wonderful, but they do come with responsibility.
That's right.
Don't break glass on these rights until you read the fine print. Yes, can you go over there and say whatever you want to that gang of hoodlums? Yes. But is it safe? No. Is it smart? No. So don't do it. So when we're all out in
Yep.
public, let's play by some rules. You know what the rules are. Let's play by them. When you get home to the confines of your home, to your domicile, hey, let your freak flag fly and make sure that you finance all of that, because I don't want my
That's right.
money going to it in any way.
Yep. Yeah, I've come to, and I think I've had this belief for a long time, that when it comes to the federal government, what is their responsibility? Like, what exactly does the Constitution say that they have the responsibility of? And really, it's to protect the United States borders, right? To protect our nation from foreign invasion. Um, we have the military that falls under the Constitution. The Navy is actually specifically spoken of. Protecting our territorial waters, and and really ensuring that elections are happening and that they're happening fairly. That is actually spoken about, and protecting our rights. That's their job. Anything beyond, and there is a mention in the Constitution about the general welfare, right, of the country. Now, what does that mean? I think it's pretty clear. Anything that builds up society, encourages, new Americans being made, promoting family, promoting, marriage, promoting a man and woman coming together to create a family and create children and future taxpayers. All of that, to me, is fine. But why does the U.S. have to promote art? Why did they need to promote? I'm okay with them having museums of, like, our history and even some of the old, art that has been, famous in America, that kind of stuff. But like the National Endowment for the Arts, why? That I remember there was this was over a decade ago. There was a display up in San Francisco of a bunch of people naked having sex on a couch, and they were funded, and this was in a public space, and they got funded for by the National Endowment of Arts for that nonsense. So this is the kind of thing that, to me, that's, if there's one thing I'm really happy that has happened out of this whole Doge thing, it is the exposure of everything that we have been funding through our tax dollars that has been destroying this country and other nations too. We were exporting that corruption everywhere. It's insane. So I'm glad to see that that we are moving back to sanity. Now, I do have some issues with some of the ways that we've cut government, and I'm not a big government guy. I actually prefer reduction in government, but the way that this thing went down, where they put out a massive buyout for anybody that wanted it that was a government employee, and the fact that you had at the same time they did a hiring freeze, and then those that they had just hired that were still within, I think, like the first year or whatever, that were not tenured, they fired them. The problem with all that is I don't have a problem with the government downsizing. What I do have a problem with, though, is downsizing in a way that removes people who are part of the national security apparatus and that play an important role, like cybersecurity personnel. I'm seeing, as I go, and I'm bringing this up because this is directly, I'm going to tie it in directly to what just happened today. Iran has been devastated. They have no weaponry, really left. We've wiped out their air defenses. We've wiped out a bunch of their military bases. We just bombed into oblivion their nuclear enrichment facilities. But what they still have access to, and their proxies, is cyber warfare. It can be conducted from anywhere, and they are pretty good at it. And I was part of a cyber protection team back in this would be 2012. I was part of Mar4 Cyber on a cyber protection team. Our job was defending national security or our national critical infrastructure against foreign adversaries hacking those systems. And on the top of the list, was China, number one. Then you also had Russia. You also had Iran, and Iran they were in the top. They were right up there. You also had the Syrian Electronic Army, and then then after that it was basically it was mostly like criminal elements, organized crime, that kind of thing. But Iran was a pretty big player, and I have concerns that what's happened is, and this is what I'm seeing all over the place. So I'm telling people this because, look, folks, this is an opportunity for you to understand that if there's going to be any kind of retaliation by Iran against the U.S., I think it is going to be a cyber attack. So I would recommend that people be prepared. Be prepared for. I don't think any cyber attack is going to be permanent. It's not going to cause permanent damage, but it could disrupt some things. It could disrupt power. It could disrupt water. In fact, Iran was involved directly with attacking U.S. water treatment plants here in the U.S. Last year, and so those are some things that we need to be aware of, and we need to understand that. So the problem is that all the shutdown, all of the layoffs, all of the people that took the buyouts. Now you've got security operations centers that basically do all the cyber, defensive operations for many of our federal agencies, and they are ghost towns right now. They are like at half staffing. So how are these people supposed to, be able to handle, they weren't even able to handle things not in a time of, escalated cyber warfare. We are going to be in escalated cyber warfare, I believe. And so that's something that I'm predicting that we will see some things. And I don't think anything will be permanent. I do think that we've got pretty good redundancy in a lot of our systems. And so if something goes offline, I think we can get it back online. But, look at what happened when you had the oil pipeline that got shut down. How much money did that cost us? Or it was billions, and it affected the markets. So
yeah, it affected the market, the oil markets, when this thing first kicked off. I just don't like it, whether or not it's necessary. Like you mentioned before, it's definitely necessary for Israel to do something, because they're right next door. But and maybe once I get more information, my opinion will change. I'm welcome to it, or I welcome it. But when I hear U.S. strikes somewhere in the Middle East, I'm tired. We've been
You got
fighting the
back
Middle East.
to Baghdad.
Yeah, we've been fighting the Middle East since I was 9 years old. In 5th grade, I remember the teacher wheeling in a TV, and we watched CNN to see the troops getting off the C-17s, and the tanks rolling in and storming Norman Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell, and we've been fighting them for a long time. So whenever I hear that we've done something again over there, I'm very apprehensive. I'm very pessimistic about the outcome. But again, Trump has proven himself to be intelligent. I hope that if you are worried about the staffing at our cybersecurity facilities, I sure hope Trump is. And I sure hope that there are contingencies in place, or maybe they've done something about it. We just don't know. But again, and sometimes when you find out that it's not true, it's very disheartening. But when you think government and these 3-letter entities and departments, they got it right. They got it covered, right? They've dotted all the I's and they've crossed all the T's, and we're good. But then a natural disaster happens, and we find out there's 1 million bottles of water sitting in a warehouse. So which one is it, guys? Which one is it, federal government? Are you guys taking all this into mind? Are you thinking of these scenarios? I'm sure they had a lot of planning and discussions before they carried this out. But I just saw a video today of what's his name? Their supreme leader burning an American flag, and I guess what would be their parliament. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that before, whatever, but it's just a high-profile bombing.
Well, Trump has made it clear for a very long time, even before he was president, that Iran must never get a nuclear weapon. So I look at it like this. So basically, one of two things has just happened. Either Israel produced some very good fake intelligence that was enough to convince the president of the United States to drop bombs, or they had some actionable intelligence that is legit, that they were on the verge of producing a nuclear weapon. And so what is being said right now, at least by those that are supporting this war, is that they had actionable intelligence, that they were days away from having enough nuclear fissile material to make nuclear weapons, that they were developing ICBMs, and they had intelligence where they had captured, intercepted, intelligence that they were planning to distribute those nuclear weapons to some of their proxies in the region. So, some of that may be true, some of that may not be true, some of that may be propaganda. I mean, I recognize that propaganda is still used today, even by us, without a doubt.
Oh yeah. You mentioned it before, USAID. It sounds so benevolent. U.S. aid, so we're handing out sacks of rice in third world countries, right? That sounds good. I'll vote for that. I'll support that, or I won't even question that. I mean, every time I hear it, USAID, U.S. aid must be good. Moving on. But that is one good thing that Doge did, was to expose things like that, and I like that. I like the idea of Doge, but like you said, some things weren't executed properly. But I would like to chalk that up to, this is kind of a new thing. It was a big mess. They don't have a lot of time to clean it up. So I think this is part of the, the trial and error. And I think they'll, the old footage of the Wright brothers getting that first airplane off the ground. Like, sometimes it would get up about 10 feet and it would hit the ground, but pretty soon it sputtered and it got off the ground and it flew. And here we are today. So I'm hoping that there's some of that involved in this. But man, things are moving quickly, economically, internationally. So yeah, a lot of things going on, but I rest assured knowing that Trump always has America's best interests at heart in every decision. So that's some damn good silver lining.
I do think that. Now, maybe, if we follow the same logic that was used to award Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize before he was even elected. Maybe now Trump will get the Peace Prize now that he's dropped bombs on Iran, right?
I remember I used to live down by a place called Monterey, California, Pebble Beach, for all you golf fans out there.
Beautiful area.
Right. Oh, beautiful. And especially if you're rich, it's a very nice area.
Yes.
But I remember when Obama got elected, and we're talking like the ink's not even dry on the inauguration papers. I mean, he just got elected, and they're out there. There's a city called Seaside, and they're out there with the city workers taking the signs down. And this street, this has been Broadway Avenue forever. People don't even say Avenue. It's just, it's off Broadway. Go down Broadway. It was just sewn into the fabric of this town. And they're up there changing the signs to Obama Way. And I remember driving by doing a double take, like, what? Obama Way? He just, his family hasn't even shown up to the doorstep of the White House with their suitcases yet. And you're already changing this to Obama Way? Did you change it to Bush Way, Clinton Way, any of that? That was just part of that gross first quote unquote black president disgustingness that we had to wade through. But man, the Nobel Peace Prize, I think if you look at the bottom of a Cracker Jack box, you can find one, because to give somebody a Nobel Peace Prize before they even get there, and they didn't do anything, and if you look at his bombing record, it's not too good. Wow. And you know what?
Stop droning people.
I would think.
In fact, he wanted to drone even some Americans. Yeah.
So, but he got the Peace Prize. Okay. But I think Trump, he would probably, put the Nobel Peace Prize like in the basement in a dusty box, because it's more, he's really making peace in the world, which is far more important than that trinket that used to mean something. Nobel Peace Prize winning scientist.
Yeah.
Boy, that carried some weight.
So what's going on in your neck of the woods with the ICE riots? Have you seen them up there in Sacramento and that area?
Yeah, nothing to the level of riots, but definitely some protests, definitely people out there marching and stuff. But it's been pretty within the limits of the First Amendment around here. Nothing too crazy. Glad that it's staying down in LA. And as I mentioned before, I'm 8 hours north of Los Angeles, so we're not getting any of that up here. Fortunately, Smell A is holding on to that one pretty well.
LA's always been kind of a interesting place. It seems like the government there has always been very corrupt. The city council, the DA, the DA's office. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've been, just corrupt as can be. And I remember even when I was growing up, LAPD got busted, and they were, basically they were stealing drugs off of drug dealers that they were busting, and then, stealing their money and stealing their drugs and then selling their drugs. And a bunch of them got busted in the, the gang unit doing that. But it's kind of been that way for a long time. I remember I was living in Pomona, which is in the, it's in the Inland Empire, or LA, or it's in Los Angeles County, but it's basically on the outskirts of Los Angeles County. And I was living there during the Rodney King riots. Mm-hmm. And we had some of that going on in our neighborhood and everything, but it wasn't quite as bad as what happened out in LA. But I do remember my dad and I deciding, I think I was like 16 at the time, we decided to go drive around the corner and see if there was anything going on. And we went around the corner, and there was what was the name of that? It was a clothing store, Miller's Outpost. You remember those?
Oh, Miller's Outpost. Man, I haven't heard that in years.
No. So wow. Miller's Outpost, you had all these gangbangers that had broken in, and they were looting this Miller's Outpost, and they were running out with jeans and clothes and shoes and everything. And the cops were lined up with their cars with their guns out, and the looters started shooting at the cops, and the cops started shooting back at them. And we're sitting across the street watching all this, and we said, I think we'll get out of here. But that was pretty nuts. That was about as crazy as I ever seen it. But my brother, He lives in Rancho Cucamonga now, which is, it's out there in the LA County. It's near Ontario Airport. But he's still out there, and he drives. He's an electrician, so he's told me that fortunately, where all of the violence has been is not near where he's working. But he has to travel all over for his job. But yeah, do you think that? Do you think we'll see? There was all this talk. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's going to be another summer of love." And like the BLM riots and everything that were going on all over the country, burning down cities. It seems to me like the No King's Day or whatever that was supposed to be this big outrage or whatever. It seems like it's been kind of it fizzled out. It was kind of a nothing burger, which I'm really glad, because I think the country's tired of that crap.
I think so, and I think that was a good indicator of people being tired of it. It's ridiculous. And we've been dealing with this. Can you believe it's been 10 years, almost around 10 years since Trump came down the escalator? So we've been dealing with this. Now, this woke garbage goes back to, you can go back to the 70s with it, as far as, entertainment, mainstream, academia and stuff like that. But it's really been ramped up in the last 10 to 15 years. And people are getting fatigued with it. I mean, no king. The only people calling Trump a king are them. Your most diehard Trump supporters don't call him a king. That's ridiculous. And if they didn't learn on November 5th of last year, then maybe they'll continue to learn when events like this fail. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. People are out here trying to work. People are out here trying to rebound from that terrible economy that Sloppy Joe had us in. So no one's even listening to that anymore. It's like the boy who cried wolf. You've been crying wolf too much. I'm done. We know he's not a dictator. We know he's not a king. Yeah. We know he's not just he's separating families. What about the poor American kid whose mom or dad gets picked up, or both? What about them? Aren't those families being separated? Do illegals love their children more than we do? Doesn't that hurt those American kids? And the illegal kids, they're not even being split up, because we're taking all of you back. So don't worry about being split up. You're all going to be in the same row on the Greyhound bus when we send you back home, as it should be. I don't want to be left holding a bunch of foreign orphans. No, you go back with mom and dad. That's who you need to be with. That's your best shot at life. Run along. But to something I want to mention real quick, you're talking about the corruption in Los Angeles, the LA riots, which happened 35 years ago, 33 years ago, 92? And just last month it passed. Yeah. But you have, not only is it the police departments, it's the mayor, it's the congresswoman. Oh, yeah. Guess what congresswoman has been in charge of the 43rd district since 1991? That would be Maxine Waters, where 93% of the children in her district can't do math at grade level. And she also went to visit in prison. Speaking of the riots, there's a man by the name of Reginald Denny. And he made the mistake. He made two mistakes that day in the riots. He made the mistake of being white, and he made the mistake of driving through the wrong intersection, because a few men grabbed him. And his third mistake was stopping. He should have hit the gas pedal and watched them get smaller in the rear view. But he stopped. They pulled him out, smashed him in the head with a cinder block, and then started dancing around his limp body. Who did Maxine Waters go to visit? Did she go to visit the Denny family to give her condolences? And Reginald Denny didn't die. Thankfully, he's still alive today. But did she visit him in the hospital? Did she visit his family? Did she put together some kind of funds or something through some kind of state government benevolence fund or anything like that? No, of course not. She went to visit one of the guys, or the guy who actually hit him in the head with a cinder block. And then she went to visit his mother, not Reginald Denny's mother, his mother. So the corruption, it definitely starts at the top.
Oh, she is about as corrupt as they get. And my understanding, talking to somebody that ran against her, she doesn't even live in her district.
Nope. Why would she? Gross. Why would she live there around those gross working class people? Ew. No, of course not. She lives somewhere where I guarantee you her house is well protected. Her neighborhood isn't being gentrified, but her constituents are. The black folks, remember, black people, she's Auntie Maxine, so she's black people's auntie somehow. I don't know how that happened. But remember, a couple of years ago, there was a black guy being pulled over by the LA County Sheriff, and she stopped her vehicle and got out and walked over there and said, I'm just checking, making sure you guys are doing right, making sure you guys aren't abusing him. So she cares about black people, right? Nate, don't laugh. This is serious. She cares about black people, but she cares about them so much that she allows Mexican gangs to take over neighborhoods, beat and rob the black people, and make them eventually move out of the neighborhood. But no, she loves black folks, and she shows it every single day.
I remember, was it Prop 9 in California? That was the proposition that moved to change the state of California's their state constitution to make marriage between a man and a woman only. And, it was black people that were primarily the ones who pushed that across the line to get passed. Now, unfortunately, the corrupt judiciary of California said, we're not going to allow that. It's unconstitutional, even though it was a vote by the people to change the California Constitution. It amazes me when you think about the black community and the shift that has happened politically across the country. And I think that was even beginning to happen in California, I think a long time ago, because they were seeing, they were being left behind as all these illegals were coming in and taking all the jobs and everything else. That's the other thing too, I hear people say all the time is that, illegals, they're not taking jobs that people want. Bullcrap. They are. In fact, it was such a problem for the Democrat Party back in the 70s is you had Cesar Chavez, who was a union leader who would go down with a bunch of Mexican Americans to the border, and they would beat the illegals that were trying to swim across the border, swim across the Rio Grande and trying to sneak across our border. They whipped them and sent them back, and said, no, you're not coming over here, because they were concerned about the wages being, basically dropped. And my brother, as an electrician, he told me that, he was the one that basically schooled me on that. And he said, look, they are taking jobs, especially in the construction field, and they will work for less, and they will, go and work without being bonded and being insured and all of that. And, and it's a problem. And I know with truck drivers too, I've talked to, the trucks coming from Mexico don't have to meet the same safety standards that our trucks have to go down there.
Yep.
And in fact, many of them were coming over here with retreads, and those treads were basically coming off on the highway, hitting cars and causing accidents. So, the illegal alien problem in our country, and particularly within states like California, obviously Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, it has caused so many problems that nobody ever talks about. And I think of one of those is, think about our school system. I mean, you guys pay an enormous amount of money in California for your schools. And I remember that they had English as a second language classes, and they spent a ton of money.
ESL.
Yep. They spent a lot of money on that, a lot of tax dollars. And because of that, the schools were cutting music programs like band. They couldn't even afford instruments. They couldn't afford paper and pencils, but they could afford a whole bunch of English as a second language books for the children of illegal aliens, and a lot of these kids were illegal aliens. They were brought here, as children, and they didn't speak English. And that's pretty crazy. And I remember my kids were affected by it in Moreno Valley, because we had them in school there, and and they had unfortunately the school system sucked. It was horrible because of where all the funding was going.
Yeah,
that been an
Go ahead.
I was going to say, has that been, when you think about what has happened within the black community to come out and support Trump, what has been the driver for that, in your opinion?
Well, I think the support for Trump is coming from part of the black community. Black women are a lost cause. They have been swept away by the current of progressiveness and woke and empowerment and all that garbage. They're gone. They will never vote for Trump. They are few and far between. My mom's a Trump voter, but you're not going to find many black women voting. So black men, I think that's where his support is coming from. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, is seeing how these illegals are treated versus people in predominantly black neighborhoods. You have schools that have been shuttered and boarded up for years. But when the illegals come, we're going to bring in the property brothers and we're going to throw some paint here and put some shutters there. And I want there to be like a ranch theme in here. They go in there and they repaint, revamp, and reopen. And then they can come in and you show up to the soccer field with your son has his ball under his arm. Sorry, kid. This field is now for the illegals. So you get to watch the illegals play soccer back and forth and laugh in the sunlight.
Yeah.
And then you have like Chicago. Well, I'm not going to raise your property tax, says Brandon Johnson. Surprise, I'm raising your property tax. And I need an extra 300 million. I'm going to take 150 million of that, and we're going to put it towards illegals. In New York, you have Katie Hochul saying, I need another $50 million for these illegals to fight their legal cases. She hasn't given a dime to you, the American taxpayer who's fighting a case or struggling with a bill or want to pay your kids tuition or something like that. No, you get back to work. But I need millions for these illegals, and we need to put them at the Roosevelt, and we need to spend millions of dollars a month to house these people. And not only are we housing them, but of course we're giving them the best food. They're drinking naked fruit juice. You know, look at the grocery store and see how much a bottle that is. They're giving them food from their country. They're giving them South American fare or wherever they're from. They're giving them food that they're used to. But kids here, if they go on a field trip, they get a sack lunch with a bologna sandwich in it and an apple that probably has a worm in it. So I think that was the culmination of being beat over the head by the Democrats and the left, and just watching those people pour over the border. And like you were saying, people are saying that they're taking the jobs Americans don't want. But that's not the issue. They're our jobs. I want all of them. You don't get any of them. Why do you get to come here and take employment? I'm sure your family probably watches the movie Christmas Story every year, right? You'll shoot your eye out. Everybody watches that. It's on TNT for 24 hours. It's in the background while the family's over in everybody's house. Well, the guy who directed and wrote that movie, he was killed, him and his son, in a collision head on by a drunk illegal. So the effects of them are real. People now, Lake and Riley and that poor 12-year-old girl, their names are on everyone's lips. But we can go back 10 years to Kate Steinle in San Francisco, who was shot to death by an illegal at Pier 39. So there are real world effects. You want to sit down across from these families and tell them that the illegals, you want to tell them that bullcrap line that, well, actually, illegals commit less crimes than Native Americans. Well, they committed this crime and it shattered our life. The construction sites, they just put 300 houses behind where I live, and they said they wouldn't for 10 years. I'm mad at you, real estate agent. But every morning when I went out there, what kind of music do you think was blaring? Do you think it was some rock music or some rap music or something like that? No, it was Spanish music. Yeah, and the roach coach was out there every day at 12 o'clock for lunch. The lady with her sliced fruit and the little pepper stuff they put on it. So just because the way they see illegals is different than we do. They see illegals as, good morning, Maria. You taking little so-and-so to school for me? Hey, Jose, try not to cut the grass too low this time. That's how they see illegals. We see illegals as, man, I don't recognize this town that I grew up in. I can't go get that job because I don't speak Spanish. My wife called me at work one day crying. I got in an accident. Well, what happened? Some illegal hit her. He grabbed his 2 kids out of his car and just walked down the street, left his car, didn't check to see if my wife was okay or nothing. He just walked into the night. We don't do that here in America. Insurance, please show up. Are you okay? That kind of thing. And it's not like, last point, it's not like they crossed that border and then, what do you guys believe in America? What do you guys do? That's what I'll believe. That's what I'll start doing. I know I come from a country where the age of consent is 13, but now that I've crossed this imaginary line into America, it's 18. No.
God forbid you have to go to an emergency room in California. And I mean, that was one thing that blew my mind. Was I remember when it used to be that you could, and I'll tell you how I see it now. It's like you see it now where I live out here in West Virginia. I went to urgent care the other day, and I mean, there was like nobody in there, and I waited for a little bit and was able to see the doctor and get out. If I was in California, it wouldn't be that way. It would be crazy. And that was one of the things that blew my mind, and just how stupid the laws were there. Was that they passed a law in California, I remember this several years back, where no emergency room could refuse anybody. If they had no insurance, didn't matter. They couldn't refuse them. And so what ended up happening was you had hospitals that were going bankrupt because it basically, you know, they had all these illegals that were using the emergency room as their regular doctor's office.
Yep. So if you live close to that hospital and you need care, well, now it's closed. So now where do you have to drive to? That's more time in the car. That's more, maybe it's an emergency situation. And how you just allow that money is not just going to be forgotten about. You know, they get their care and they walk, they're done. And that money is just not going to go away. It's going to get passed. That's why you have an ambulance ride at $4,500 and a $150 Motrin or something like that. That is why. That's the effects. One of the effects of illegals and the wear and tear on society. We're educating their kids. We're feeding their kids. They're driving on our roads. Where I used to live, it was in a place called Salinas, California. If you have produce in your crisper, it came from California. Strawberries, lettuce, onions, celery, all that stuff goes to the John Steinbeck. That's what he wrote about, is the Salinas Valley. You go, there's a place called the Quadrangle. It's this huge, almost strip mall looking place. And if you were an illegal, it was one-stop shop. They had the dentist office there. They had the welfare office there. You could get a free phone. You can get your kids set up in school. You can get free clothes. And everybody who was lined up there was an illegal. And I walked up there just to ask what's going on. You could feel the tension. They're looking at me. You're looking at me?
Like, what are you doing here?
The nerve to look at me like that. And you're the one who's not supposed to be here. No, that they're doing jobs Americans won't do. That's a lie. That's a cop-out. And there was a program in California called the Bracero program, where able-bodied young men, white, black, whatever, Asian, would be picked up by a bus at 5 o'clock in the morning, driven out to the fields. They work in the fields all day, and then they drop them back off at the end of the day. And if you think illegals are the only ones who can do the menial labor, you got another thing coming, because California is not going to let that produce sit on the vine and rot. They will figure something out.
Hey, my wife was just giving me the hand signals that President Trump is addressing the nation right now.
Oh, wow.
So I think we'll wrap things up so folks can go on and see what the president has to say. I do think that this is kind of a critical moment in time. Jericho, thank you so much for joining us. We've been on here for about an hour, but tell people, where can they find you? What you've got your own show. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
You can follow me on all the major platforms: X, Instagram, Rumble. Just look for Jericho Green. On Instagram, it's at JGTalk2. YouTube, of course, Jericho Green. If you Google me, I'll be the first one that pops up. It's me and some fitness lady. I don't know how she got the name Jericho Green, but that's what it is. So you can find me anywhere. I thank you for your time, Nate. Please tell Jeanette I said thank you for her prompt professionalism.
Absolutely. And I hope to have you on.
Yeah, I'll be on tomorrow. So if you'll have me. So yeah, man, I'm here. Anytime you want to hang out, you want me to have me on, just let me know, man. I'll be more than happy to. I really appreciate it.